Hello.
Ted.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello, Jim. How are you?
Okay, I called Mark, and he wasn't able to talk to me till later on, but when he did talk to me, you know, it seemed to corroborate what you said, but I haven't heard anything since, and I haven't been able to get hold of him since, so I was wondering if there have been any developments and so forth, mainly because since I talked to you, I've talked to the investigators that are based here that have just come back from Washington, and they're full of piss and vinegar and have been stimulated by the attitude up there and the increased interest in New Orleans and the new assignments they've been given.
The new assignments?
Oh, absolutely. In the last few weeks, to quote them, in the last 2 weeks, the interest in New Orleans, which has been mounting in recent months, has absolutely doubled, and some of the top people who were here last month are coming back again in the next 10 days or so.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. They're especially interested in Clinton. You remember Clinton?
Yeah.
Where we found Shaw and Ferry with Oswald, and they're coming down to go on their second trip to Clinton. This is the top people, the top investigators and legal people from Washington.
Well,
and they say, and so I told them that I just said that I can't give you any details because I don't want to draw you into the politics of the thing, but I've heard from pretty good sources that this is the position that Blakey seems to be heading for, and I called to their attention that I've warned them that some weeks back that I couldn't help but interpret the postponement of hearings, the postponement of a first annual report, as being precisely what would happen if they were going to have a sudden vote in Congress without any notice to anybody and cancel everything. And they said that worried them too, but the attitude of Blakey, they're satisfied now that while Blakey's very conservative, his right-hand man is so aggressive. Gary, I can't think of his name at the moment, is so aggressive that they feel that there's so much momentum, and especially enthusiasm about the New Orleans developments, that they would be an explosion. Furthermore, Blakey himself presided at a presentation a little over a week ago in which the committee was given 5 hours of summary of developments, much of it in New Orleans. And Blakey was very aggressive in the presentation. They said
that?
They said they were not present, but they talked to other investigators who were.
But Jim, you say you talked to Mark?
I talked to Mark. He was only telling me, he was in effect repeating your position and what, I can't remember whether he had said to the press or was going to say. I think he had given it to the press and was waiting to see where it would show, but yeah. I haven't seen anything.
Yeah, he gave a press conference, and I'm to soon, I thought I would receive the tape of that today, in which he blasted Blakey. I did a show in which I pointed up some of the things that Mark had said in reference to Blakey, and Donald Freed had told me in reference to Blakey. And also Richard E. Sprague had told me that he talked to Donovan Gay and Robert Lehner of the committee, researchers, who had been let go by the committee.
Yeah.
And that they felt that Blakey was doing things to suppress the information. Now, yesterday I talked to Congressman Dodd of the committee, and I talked to Yvonne Burke of the committee, and I talked to the office of McKinney and Pryor.
The attitude of the people on the committee you talked to?
Well, their attitude was that they could not conceive of Blakey doing what I charged him, according to my information, with doing. That is suppressing the New Orleans scenario, suppressing other things that I've heard were being suppressed. They said they could not believe that that was so. Weisberg, Harold Weisberg, I talked to him the other day, again, and he said he heard on WRC radio in Maryland, the Washington station, that the report, this is 2 days ago, that the report, an interim report had been released, and that they said that there was no conspiracy. I then checked with a station here who had the news, but they didn't say anything about whether a conspiracy or not, and that seems to be an erroneous statement by Weisberg in terms of what he said that they said.
Yeah,
now, I talked... Pardon?
That would be all over the news service.
That's what Mark and I talked about. He called me yesterday. Mark called me yesterday and said, is that true that Weisberg said that? I said, yeah. He said, well, you can't take his word because he's the world's worst investigator. He said, if that was said, he said that would be all over every news service in the world. I said, well, that's what I thought, too. I'm just telling you what he told me.
Times would love to have that like a banner headline.
Oh, all over. And that's what Mark said, and that's what I know about the media. And so, but I talked to Louis Stokes' secretary, seems to be getting back to me, but I had a lengthy conversation with her as well. She told me...
Isn't he?
Huh?
He's pretty committed, isn't he?
Well, that's what they say, although I've been hearing some stuff from Jerry Polikoff and Richard E. Sprague, the researcher, who told me that he was very closely aligned with the organized crime, as is Blakey. There's a 26-page document relating to Mo Dalitz and Louis Nizer and Robert Blakey, which proves that Blakey is serving intelligence interests. Also some other things that I've heard from Mark that Blakey has done, including turning over a top-secret document to the CIA after promising not to do it, and also interceding for Mo Dalitz. Well, anyway, but they tell me that the report had to go to the printer now. It's an interim report just dealing on finances, etc. And that's all it says about finances, computers, etc., that they're asking for $2.5 million that Blakey had turned back to the Treasury, $425,000, which is the reason for a lot of dissension on that committee staff, because they said that they needed more money. Why is he turning that money back? It's happening right now. Either Lane is right and all of my other sources are right about Blakey being a nefarious cover-up artist, which I charged him with when I spoke to Congressman Dodd and Yvonne Burke. They all defended Blakey. They said that that couldn't be and that couldn't happen, and they want some evidence on that before they... I said, well, don't you think you should at least inquire as to what's going on there and what he's doing? Ask him why it is that he accepted a top position of the Justice Department Criminal Division. Ask him that question, and I tried to alert them. I did a radio show on it. Lane did a press conference on it. Now, something is happening. Either you're totally correct about the New Orleans scenario interest by the researchers, and I have no reason to doubt that you are.
Well, they're completely, they wouldn't necessarily be a part of what Blakey may be trying to do. All I can say is at the investigative level, there's tremendous enthusiasm. So Blakey may not be free. It's possible for you, all your sources, to be right, and Blakey to be actively doing that. He certainly is ultra-conservative, to say the least, in their description. But all I'm trying to emphasize is that nothing has been done to slow down the researchers. In fact, in the last 2 weeks, the New Orleans contingent has been doubled.
Well, may I say...
I have 4 permanent people down here.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's right. The investigators, like the top investigator for the JFK side, Cliff Fenton.
Yeah.
Those guys are so turned on by the New Orleans scene that, to use the phrase by one of the investigators I talked to today, they said that even if that's true, there's just too much momentum there with the New Orleans developments that he could never get away with it. There's too much excitement about Clinton and the New Orleans in general.
Now, what is your... Now, as a former DA yourself, and hopefully you retained in that post, but let me ask you a question, Jim. Legalistic question now. If there is evidence about this, and overwhelming evidence from various sources about the King case, about the JFK case through you and some other sources, could Blakey conceivably effectuate a cover-up of that evidence that the researchers know about?
I don't know enough about their mechanics up there. They say no because there's too much momentum and there's too much awareness on the part of the researchers.
That's what Yvonne Burke told me too.
Oh, really?
Yes, she said I can't see how he could do that. She said, do you know? I'll tell you what she said. She said, do you know how we're functioning?
Congressman?
Congresswoman, yeah.
Okay.
Yvonne Burke. She's a member of the committee.
Okay.
One of the 12 members of the committee, and she said, you know, wait a minute, she says, I can't conceive that he's doing it. She says, he gives me no indication of doing it. I said, well, maybe he's doing it very nefariously and secretively. So she said, no. She said, you know how we're functioning here? I said, no, how? She says, we've got a system, she says, that's so fantastic. She said that he can't possibly do it. But I'll tell you what Congressman Dodd said to me yesterday, and I have this on tape. He told me, I said, wait a minute, why don't you ask Blakey about the New Orleans scenario and the information that Garrison has turned over to that to researchers who are overwhelmed of conspiracy just based on the information turned over by Garrison. He said, that's not true. I said, that's not true? He said, no. I said, you're saying that the information is not overwhelming of conspiracy that at least Garrison turned over? For one? He said, no. He said, that's not true. I've seen this stuff and it's not true. Now, that's what Congressman Dodd said. Now, Lane has to...
She says she has seen,
He has.
She sees the New Orleans information is presented to her as negative?
No, this is Congressman Dodd now.
Oh, what's he saying?
I asked him, I said, well, wait a minute, I was making charges against Blakey, and I said, look, ask Blakey about the information that is turned over to the researchers just in the New Orleans scenario provided by Jim Garrison, former New Orleans district attorney. I said, and from what I've heard, that is overwhelming, and they are overwhelmed with evidence of conspiracy. He said, that's not true. I said, it's not true? He said, no, he's seen the stuff and it's not true, but I can't go into it. Now that's what...
meetings in which they're discussing the assassination.
Pardon me?
They have meetings in which they're specifically discussing the assassination, which are all very present. With details.
Details. You're talking about the Perry Raymond Russo thing?
Huh?
You're talking about
No, since then. They've gone beyond that.
Beyond that?
Into new areas that we hadn't reached yet.
Hmm.
We had the right people, but we didn't have all their meetings.
Well...
People present at the meetings.
Well, look, I mean, I agree with what you're saying, but Lane feels that Dodd, who admitted to me during the conversation that he is the one who selected Robert Blakey to be chief counsel. And Lane said that he inferred that Dodd was probably on the other side. Congressman Dodd.
What is the attitude of that woman?
Yvonne Burke, she said, these are very serious charges. You better check your sources because...
I mean, is she able to see...
through Blakey?
They have developed... No, is she able to see that the investigators have developed evidence of conspiracy?
She would not go into that, but she just... All she said definitively on that point, or as definitive as I can get her, is that she could not see how that could be done, that Blakey could cover up massive evidence of conspiracy which has reached the researchers of that committee. She just could not believe or conceive how Blakey could possibly cover that up, because she alluded to the system that they have is so fantastic that he could not do that. Now, and I'll tell you something. Dodd told me, and Congressman Dodd told me of the committee, and Yvonne Burke inferred that Mark Lane is not a credible source of information relating to Blakey. Now, I don't know what the hell is going on here, Jim, but I'll tell you, I mean, at least I can say that I've talked to them. They are made aware of the possibilities which exist of Blakey.
It makes it a little harder for Blakey to pull off a stunt like that.
That's why I'm doing it, and I tell you, Jim...
That's what Mark is doing, and I'm sure it makes it much harder, especially when there is momentum. I'm satisfied there is momentum on the part of the investigators.
Yes.
They're really turned on.
Yeah, well, the thing is now, if that is true, and there's of course no reason to doubt you, but if that is in fact a fact, can Blakey successfully effectuate a cover-up of the evidence which has been turned over to that committee? He has gotten rid of Donovan Gay and Robert Lehner. They have been dismissed by that committee. One was,
I presume, were two men who were...
They were investigators.
Two investigators who had become clearly aware of conspiracy.
That's right. And Richard Eastbrake called me yesterday, told me that he had talked to both men and that they were released. One was asked to resign for his reputation, and the other one was disfired because of their dissension to what Blakey was doing in covering up the evidence of the investigation, and that he wasn't going far enough into it. Now, I also was told that there has been neutron activation analysis and spectrographic analysis of the fragments of the JFK assassination. They have completed those, and even though they proved beyond any question that they came from two different kinds of rifles, Lane told me this, that even though they had concluded that, what they were doing through Blakey was saying that they have not yet, in fact, conducted those examinations and ballistics, and that they would do so, when in fact they have done so, and it proves conclusively conspiracies in the JFK case. And that, again, is what Blakey is doing, according to Lane. Now, somebody is giving me bad information. I don't know who it is.
I think it may be true as to Blakey, and the problem, Blakey may have a problem, which may be the cause of his delay, with the information which has been turned over to the investigators by me and other people, in which they've gone on and made progress on themselves and seen firsthand. So that may be the reason for a delay on Blakey's part. It's possible for the, in other words, I'm saying it's possible for the information you're receiving on Blakey to be true, and at the same time it's possible for the enthusiasm the investigators are coming down with. After all, they're seeing the top investigators up there. It's possible that their gung-ho is genuine. But what they say is that if something like that happened, they say it would turn into a big scandal, because regardless of the written commitments and so forth, they feel most of the investigators would rebel en masse. That's what we're hoping, and we're hoping that they come forward. Well, because Richard Eastbrake has talked to them, and I will be talking to them. We want them to come forward. Those people who have been released, the people who are dissenting from what Blake does, a real turmoil over there. There really is. There's like a dogfight over there.
relating to the research and the investigators viewing of that research and what Blakey is doing. That's why people are being fired, asked to resign, etc. Now, what I'm doing, I broke the story on radio and KGO in San Francisco, exposing what Blakey's doing, that he's suppressing your information, other researchers' information, etc. And Mark Lane called a press conference. What we're doing, and now that we're talking to the committee, and Mark has sent letters to every member of the committee asking to speak to them about what Blakey is doing. But what we're doing is massing the pressure. I've gotten letters. I asked for letters to be sent to that committee. I just today got a whole bunch of mail saying that they're asking for the immediate firing of Blakey if these allegations are true.
Who's asking for that?
Well, I'm asking for it. And the people who wrote to members of the committee, saying to Tip O'Neill, to Chairman Stokes, asking that if these allegations be investigated, and if it's true, that Blake should be fired.
Well, that's great. At least they've been alerted.
That's right, Jim.
My off-the-cuff evaluation, then, after talking to investigators, is the investigation part, which was picked by Richard A. Sprague.
Mm-hmm.
He's got some magnificent detectives in there.
Although they're being insulted, yeah.
Yeah, but he has left his mark with these strong characters whose attitude is that they're not going to
stand for it.
Huh?
They're not going to stand for it.
They're not going to stand for it.
Yeah.
And they've made a lot of progress, and much more than they expected to, especially in the New Orleans area. So I think it's my feeling is that in view of Blakey's continual postponement of hearings, which would have made clear to the country that there had been developments unavoidably. I wish I could name them, but then that would put the investigators here were communicating with me in trouble, and then they would get fired.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I could tell you how far that they've gone, the progress they've made. It's past conspiracy. It's past prima facie. It's solid evidence.
Yes.
On tape. I mean, there's no question about it, but it doesn't seem to be reaching. Blakey seemed to have cotton in his ears on purpose.
Well, I'll tell you, Jim.
But in other words, when he finally ultimately postpones the first year-end report, by which time he had positive development of conspiracy in the New Orleans area alone. I have no idea what they've developed in Dallas, although I gave him leads about Dallas, which would indicate it if they followed it through. But the New Orleans area alone indicated positive conspiracy evidence. And when he postponed that one, then I first had my suspicions.
Yes, there's no reason for him to have done that. From what I understand...
I have to assume that he's wrong with a capital W, that they have their man there, but doesn't have the freedom to do what he'd like to do, and he's probably trying to edge toward it, but if the right people are alerted, maybe he can't carry it off.
Well, I'll tell you, there was an article written by Jerry Polikoff. You know him?
I remember the name from years ago. He wrote an article of some...
Yeah, in New Times about the media, and he was on my TV show as a guest. He wrote an article in the latest New Times magazine, and it said, Blakey has been as cozy with the CIA and FBI as he's been draconian with his staff. Several staff members have either been fired or talked into resigning because the FBI would not clear them, often for unstated or ambiguous reasons. Then it said, and those who are allowed, it says, other staffers who are still pending CIA clearance, the members of the staff have to get CIA and FBI clearance, have not been allowed any access to classified material. And those who are allowed to read CIA documents, staffers charged must submit any notes they make to the CIA for review. Blakey, who has refused to call Richard Helms as a witness, once said of intelligence agencies, and I quote, they quote him, "You don't think they'd lie to me, do you? I've been working with those people for 20 years." Close quotes. Now there's some things that prove that he is very directly involved on the side of organized crime and his protection of Mo Dallas.
That's the first cousin of the CIA.
Pardon me?
That's the first cousin of the CIA.
Yes, I understand that. In fact, they're very significant. Now, what we're doing now is to focus attention by whichever way we can to the possibility of him being a cover-up artist, as I've accused him of to these committee members, a cover-up artist par excellence. I would hope that the time would come where I've talked to Blakey. He refuses to comment, even though I directly charge him with these nefarious activities and inclinations. He refuses to comment. I've got a conversation on tape of me talking to him, and I have the other conversations on tape. And I know that what Mark is doing, I mean, I would love to apologize someday to Blakey, say I was wrong.
No, I think you've got I think you're probably right, but I think that don't mend up the problem for him, and now that you all may have really made it impossible for him.
That's what and then I can say, well, I did what I had to do, and they will be getting back to me. I'll be getting the report.
Next time you talk to a congressman, why don't you, who says that they've seen no evidence of a conspiracy, why don't you tell them to do something like this? Why don't you say, without warning to Blakey, why don't you just call the chief investigator for, as if you didn't know his name, on the JFK side, on your own, without any warning, and ask him if there has been any evidence of a conspiracy. And by the time Cliff Fenton, no, really, that would do it.
Yes.
In other words, you wouldn't put Fenton in a corner by letting him know in advance, and you tell the congressman, just do it like it's your own idea. You call in Fenton and say, just on your own.
Yes.
Whoever the chief investigator is, like you don't know, ask at the investigative level, because that's where they've made the progress.
Yes. But
on your own, just do it at a quick secret meeting, and you'll be in for the surprise of your life.
Well, you see, Jim, the problem is that...
Because they're using the legal, it's apparent that they're using the legal level, that they use the lawyers did the dirty in the Warren Commission. They're using the lawyers, because they're easier to buy than the New York homicide detective after 20 years. They're using the lawyers to insulate the factual development from the commission. But why doesn't the commission send for some of the investigators, like on the JFK side?
Yes, and not only that, but I see it the real problem also. In fact, I perceive the main problem to be the top secrecy loyalty oath that they had to sign, which prohibits them from divulging anything they learn as a result of their investigations. It is an agreement for life.
It would not prohibit them from divulging it to the committee if the committee on short notice sent for Fenton and some of the other top investigators, Fenton and some of the New Orleans investigators, and said, just tell us
what's going on.
Yes or no. No, yes or no, have you developed evidence of a conspiracy? If so, describe it to us. And it would be so solid that they would be overwhelmed. They would then call Blakey in to dismiss him.
That is a very good, I'm going to do that. You know, I'm going to talk to him.
If you have somebody on the committee that has confidence in you,
yes,
you can tell them, and I can't describe the evidence to you, but you can say, it is so solid, it is so solid, I'm not even free to describe it, but it's being insulated from you by the top level of the legal staff, namely Blakey. If you sent for some of the New Orleans investigators and Fenton and asked them, have you developed evidence, not just inclinations, have you encountered evidence of a conspiracy from the New Orleans part of the investigation? If so, describe it to us. You can tell your friend on the committee that when they finish describing it, they would know Blakey was, they wouldn't have to ask Blakey any questions.
Yeah, because, you know...
They've been insulated. They don't dream.
They don't,
They don't dream what they have.
I know, and the thing is that everybody that I talk to says, send me some evidence, send me some evidence. Now, I would imagine that that is a very good route to follow, and I'll try to proceed on it. You
can't use this word because it would burn the investigators, but they have a fucking confession from one of the guys participating in the meetings.
They do.
Accessory.
As an accessory.
On tape. Hours. Dates, places.
And that is...
to Dallas in preparation.
And that is verified. That's corroborated.
Absolutely. Oh, well, they're going to say it isn't corroborated, but it's been corroborated by 1,000 things that I've sent up to corroborate it.
Do you think...
their reply will be, we heard of that, but it's not corroborated.
Yeah, well, but there's a way to assuage that. I would like Yvonne Burke, because I think that this is a time to strike, to talk to you. Would you like to discuss things with her?
I'd be happy to.
She's an honest woman, according to Mark.
Is there some way to have her initiate the call? Because otherwise she'll think I'm trying to...
No. I'll have her initiate the call. I'll talk to her. And I'll have her initiate the call to your office.
And I can be blunter and direct with her than I can with anybody else.
That's
right. I can tell her in advance that I don't want these men fired because of what I'm going to tell her, because she'll figure out that I'm giving them so much that they have to give me a few things in return about the responses and what develops when I give them a lead.
All right.
And I don't want them fired, but I can be very blunt with her and describe she's going to fall out of her chair when I tell her some of the things that developed.
What I'll do then, Jim, I'll call her Monday. She's supposed to be getting back to me anyway, and tell her to initiate the call to you, and then you and her can discuss things in your own way And I think that would serve a very useful purpose right now.
Please emphasize, because I'm well aware of the discreditation the national media has done. Please emphasize that my inclination has been not to get into the act, that I don't seek publicity, that I'm leaning over backwards not to, but I'm well aware of the developments here because I've turned over so much material. We went far beyond the Shaw case. That was just an incident, and we were right there, but we went far beyond that, and the material I've turned over to these men, they've gone far beyond where we went. And I have been astonished as the months pass and silence comes from Washington.
Yes, well, let's try. I'm going to try to effectuate a stoppage of that silence, because I asked her, I said, have you seen any of the evidence? She says, are you kidding? I've interviewed witnesses. I said, okay.
Yes, they've been picked. I'll give her a witness she hasn't interviewed and tell her about the meetings he describes. Let her interview him.
Okay, well, what we'll do is...
Why haven't they taken a deposition from him in these months? They've left him available to be killed.
Oh, yeah, the person in the Bannister office.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I know what you mean. I think you may be referring...
I guess over the phone because it may be monitored, but the point is,
yes,
they just leave him available to be killed as the months pass, and they don't take his deposition.
All right, well, what we can do is, I'll have her call you up Monday as soon as possible, and she'll discuss it with you.
He not only attended meetings in which they planned the assassination, and in detail, they even sent him on a trip to Dallas just before the assassination to give, to meet with one of the other people involved and give him maps and photographs.
As you say, this may be monitored. I do know the name of the man you're talking about. I'm very sure of that, and I'll have you discuss it with her. I think that's...
But at least if they kill him, they hurt themselves because it's all on tape now, and they'll be hard put to ignore what's on tape of a man who's been killed.
I'll have her communicate with you, Jim, and I think that's the best way to do it right now. So at least you can say, because Mark feels that she is a very bright and honest woman, and I agree, she is. She's a dedicated woman, I think. It could be that she's just misinformed, and I think that the conversation with you would prove very, very helpful.
Obviously, she's been insulated from solid evidence.
That's right.
Bringing in negative evidence.
That's
the indications of that is these investigators, enthusiastic as they are, and you can't repeat this, haven't had a chance to study, say, the shooting part in Dallas. And I happen to ask idly, do they understand now about his being shot from the front? Has that finally been clarified? They've been investigating for a year. And they reply stunned me. They said, well, they're not too clear about that. The position of the investigation still is that Oswald fired 3 shots. I said, what? And they say perhaps there was a shot fired from the front, but they're not. I said, after a year from of the investigation, I would just hit them with rapid fire things like, don't they know that the Oswald never shot anything, that the paraffin tests show that no nitrate at all. He could not possibly have shot an old gun like that. I said, don't they know that he wasn't up there on the 6th floor? Don't they know that the cause of death, signed by Dr. McClellan's, a gunshot wound to the temple?
The left temple.
Yeah, well, he was turning to the right.
Yes.
It's straight from the grass. No.
Yes.
I said, don't they know all those things? And they said, well, yes, but they've studied it and they feel that Oswald fired 3 shots. I said, everybody in the country knows Oswald couldn't have fired 3 shots in 5.8 seconds. And after a year, they still don't know that? I said, there's something wrong at that level. You're being conned. And they shrugged and said, well, we can't say about that, but we sure know that the area we're digging in, we made a lot of progress, and they can't fool us about that.
Yes.
So they do have control, apparently, of the team of experts, the shooting experts, that they apparently have some control of them.
But there may be a redress to that postulation, too, because there's some photographs that have been accrued, which have been gotten by the committee, which resided in AP and UPI and the various TV stations. They have obtained some photographs, hitherto unpublished photographs, according to Richard E. Sprague, who told me that he was very encouraged with those photographs and the fact that the committee had gotten them, so maybe there'd be a change of that posture relating to the actual assassination itself as well, Jim. All right, so what we'll do is, what I mentioned, I'll tell Yvonne Burke and possibly Christopher Dodd to call you up, and you talk with them, and I think that would be a very useful thing at this time.
I certainly will.
All right, nice talking to you, James.
Yes, you.
Bye-bye.